This is the Made for Success podcast, and this is Chris Widener, speaker and author of over 15 books, including the New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestseller, The Angel Inside. The Made for Success podcast will help you turn your potential into performance, succeed in every area of your life, and achieve your dreams. And now, enjoy the show.
Our guest today is Rob Waldman. Rob Waldo Waldman is the founder and president of the Patriot Group, which is a leadership and sales consulting firm based in Atlanta. He is a former Air Force fighter pilot with over 2,650 flight hours and 65 real-world combat missions, and uses the experience of a real-world combat to relate to sales and management execution. In addition, Waldo has his MBA and spent a number of years in the software and mergers and acquisitions business. He has earned achievements including Instructor Pilot of the Year, Top Gun, and Top Flight Lead. Welcome, Waldo.
Thank you.
Yeah, good to have you here. I always like to have folks that I've been friends with for a number of years, and you and I have gotten to know each other the last couple of years through some speaking engagements and through the National Speaker Association. Yeah. So I'm excited to let the audience know some of the things that I know about you, and glad to have you here.
Awesome.
Good. One of my goals with the show here is to have people like yourself who've achieved so much in life and been so successful, is to bring them in and let people get to know the real story. Because oftentimes we see, we look at Waldo and we go, Air Force Academy grad, fighter pilot, Top Gun, successful business person, decides he's going to get into speaking, and now he's taking the speaking world by storm, and that, and you go, wow, wouldn't it be great to be Waldo? But then they don't realize the things that have happened behind the scenes that you've had to overcome. And one of the things that I would like for you to talk a little bit about is what you call your significant emotional experience. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really going to help people, because they're going to realize that you didn't get to do and be what you've done without having to really overcome some significant challenges, mm-hmm. particularly as it pertains to the profession of a fighter pilot. So tell us about that, what happened to you there, and how your evolution of your life and career came to overcome those things.
Okay. I have a saying I talk about in my presentations: the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. Mm. The more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed more. And all the things you do behind the scenes, the sacrifices and the things you have to overcome to allow you to go out there and execute with as minimal bleeding as possible. Yeah. We all have challenges in life, things that we have to overcome. When I was 3 years into my flying career, I went scuba diving down in the Caribbean. In those quick 2-hour courses you hear about,
right.
Maybe you even participated in them. Well, I'm not necessarily a fish in the water. I've got some challenges, but I'm okay. I grew up outside the Atlantic Ocean, but I went on a scuba diving trip. And long story short, I went under 35 feet, accidentally sucked in basically a whole lung full of water. Mm. And had a panic attack 35 feet under the ground, saw stars, my heart was pounding. I thought I was literally going to die. It was traumatic for me. And I never had a panic attack before in my life then, and I'm like, I have got to go up now. Mm. Needless to say, absolutely traumatic for me. I got up out of the water saying, that's the last time I'm ever going to scuba dive again. My confidence was shattered, and I literally thought I was going to die. A few weeks later, I was flying in a T-37, flying on a training sortie.
And you'd been flying for 3 years at this
3 years. I had
so you were comfortable with the planes?
Comfortable. Never had a bout
right.
with any, never had issues. Mm-hmm. It was my life.
Yeah.
And I had a panic attack flying at around 20,000 feet. Basically, I started feeling claustrophobic. Huh. Not a good thing for a fighter pilot.
No, not a good thing.
And I realized then, Chris, that I had latent claustrophobia that had come out, that significant event, dying and almost dying in that scuba diving accident, brought it out. And for the next few years, in particular for the next several months, I was faced with dealing with that claustrophobia, strapping on that plane, teaching men and women how to fly, dealing with that, and just putting that whole claustrophobia, that panic, and also I'm afraid of heights. That's a whole nother story. I grew up.
Another thing, maybe being a pilot at 30,000 feet might not be conducive to, but those are great lessons.
Yeah.
Because people get into situations in business, and they think that they have to be perfect or they have to have everything settled, and it's not so much about having all their issues settled. It's about dealing with them and overcoming them and being successful in spite of them.
Right.
So how did you do that? You're claustrophobic, fear of heights, and they're sticking you in a small little space at 30,000 feet. How do you do that?
Passion. Not quitting when my passion for flying was so strong, I refused to let it take control of me. You have opportunities in your life to let your fears take over, or to let your passion and your love for whatever it is you're doing take over. If I would have gave into that claustrophobia and didn't do all the things that I talked about, focusing on the mission, it's not about me, and becoming so adept in psychologically defeating this claustrophobia, reading books, putting myself in situations, focusing on my student, focusing on my wingman. I love flying so much that it was taking the joy out of my life. I wanted to love flying. I wanted to enjoy it. So, and flying did bring me joy. So my passion was so strong, I didn't give in to my fear. And that's what I think we need to do in life and in business and in our relationships. Be so passionate about what you're doing that you don't care about anything else except accomplishing this. People are passionate about business. People are passionate about dogs, animals, nature, whatever. Don't give in to the fear, because at the end of the day, when you go to bed at night, you're going to close your eyes and say, I'm not being true to who I am. And I'm not being true to what I need and want in my life. And if you let fear control you, you're never going to be able to be a success.
So how do you do that? Let's get real practical. Is it a matter, like when you got in that jet and you're claustrophobic and they drop the lid on you and you're in there, and did you feel a sense of it, like, uh-oh, I'm in this tight space now, and then you just focused in? Let's make some examples of how people in real life who go out, maybe they're afraid to cold call. I know you were saying you've got a new thing you're going to start doing called turn your cold call into a bold call. People hate cold calling, right? So, and they're looking at their phone and they're thinking, oh, I got to do this call. But then they focus and they pick up the... How do you do that? How do you really get over your fear?
It, like I said before, it all has to do with what you do before the scenes, the sweat and sacrifice, the preparation, the training, the discipline. Many people aren't willing to do what it takes to discipline themselves to prepare for their missions. Like I said before I strapped in that jet, I would think about my mission. I would think, okay, I'm gonna be claustrophobic. This is a reality. This is the truth. Acknowledging the truth, acknowledging that you're going to be fearful and things are going to happen is so important. When you have resistance, that's what causes stress and anxiety and panic and fear. When you acknowledge it, you say, okay, I'm going to get claustrophobic. Come on. I used to say to myself, bring it on. You're going to get claustrophobic. All right, come on. Okay, I'm feeling claustrophobic. Okay, done. And I would let it flow through my system, acknowledge it rather than resist it. And then psychologically get myself in gear. Focus, okay. Rob, stop being selfish. It's not about you. You've got a mission to do. You want to be a fighter pilot? It's not about you. Get out of your own mind. Think of the mission. Think of those that you're serving. And then, okay, I'm a little afraid right now. I got my wingman there. They're going to check me out. If I start having a problem, I'll say, 2, I got a problem. I need to land. Okay, Waldo, I got you. All right, that's nice to know. It's nice to look over your shoulder when you're in a stressful situation in a closing a big business deal, and you pick up the phone and talk to your VP and say, I need help, bro. Help me out. I got you covered, Chris. You talk to your wife or your husband and say, listen, I'm under an environment right now. Can you help me out? That feels good to know that somebody's there. They absorb your fear. And then lastly, I think about winning. I know that it's going to be a stressful 7 hours, but I know at the end of that 7 hours, when I grab that Italian cappuccino in Italy where I flew my missions, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to go, I earned this. Yeah. This feels great. This feels so much better than it would have felt if I didn't go on that mission. I gave in to my fears and went to bed, you know? So I fill myself with those positive endorphins, and oh, this is great. And those are kind of some of the steps that you need to do.
So it really is mental discipline. You were basically choosing to change your thoughts, and by changing your thoughts, you change your whole environment.
Yes, but it's not, people say, confront your fears. Do them in spite of your fears, you know? I talk more about courage, and courage, despite feeling all that anxiety and fear is important, but there has to be a process. That's why I say mission, wingman, winning, and think about it. Shift, 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 because your mind can't think about multiple things at once. It can only focus on one thing. And when you're so engulfed, that's why they talk about, you know, being in the present. You know, people like athletes, fighter pilots, surgeons, you know, where they're so engulfed in the moment, they're so focused. They don't think about all those auxiliary demons that are going on, the monkeys in our mind. Being focused in life is one of the most critical components to success, but as a step and a process takes discipline, work, and eventually you'll train your mind, and that will eventually lead to more of a successful mindset, and you'll become more successful in other things you do.
Let's talk about some of the terms that you learned in the military and as a fighter pilot, and now you apply in your speeches and your consulting to business environment. Check 6. Tell us about that. That's one of the big
You heard
ones.
me mention it a couple of times before.
Yeah.
6 o'clock, if you think of a clock, 6 o'clock's behind you.
Okay.
And in combat, that's where the threat was coming 9 times out of 10, behind you, where you don't see it. You're always looking over your shoulder for the threat. 75% of the time, we're looking outside the cockpit, not looking forward or in our instruments. But just as important as the threat, Chris, are my wingmen. Mile away, maybe right on my wingtip. And I'm monitoring them, I'm looking behind them, because the threat might be coming to them. If I'm directly behind, it's hard for me to see behind my back.
Right.
And I'm flying, especially strapped in an F-16.
Especially going Mach 1.
Yeah, right. But if you're flying a mile away from me, and I could just go like this and look behind you, and you could just go like that and look behind me. Mutual support. I can see things behind you that you can't see, and we need each other to accomplish the mission. We're always backing each other up, mutual support. I'm checking your 6, you're checking mine. And if you take that to life, when I'm flying in formation with that man or woman and we're doing that mission, we brief the mission, we train together, we trust each other, we know we're going to be there for each other. And if you have a wingman that you're flying with on your business missions, your husband and wife, your kids, or whatever, they're looking at you to be their wingman. There's a lot that goes behind being a wingman. You know, people say, hey, I'm your wingman. Well, there's a lot to say you're a wingman, a trusted partner. You better be training, you better be preparing, you better be in your own, flying your own jet perfectly, and I better trust you. When you're in business and in life, to be a wingman means to be there for each other. And I think when you're dealing with a situation, a stressful environment at work, when you talk to the person next door to you in the cubicle next door, your supervisor, ask for help, fly a mission together, that's kind of the same thing, and it all starts with checking 6 and building that mutual support.
How can you, in a corporate environment or even a small business, we're continually told to take care of your own. You know, this is your realm. You take care of it. I'm not so sure that the whole Check 6 idea has made it to corporate America. How can they apply that? What can they do? How do you set that up? Is it just something that leadership has to talk about? Do you just have to set up systems so that the sales team is looking out for the finance team, and everybody's looking out for each other? How does that work?
It's a tough nut to crack, so to speak. And they talk about silos: sales, marketing, tech support, engineering, R&D.
And they're often in different buildings.
Yes. I talk about a couple things. Obviously, when you have annual meetings, quarterly meetings, people need to understand how their role fits into the big picture.
Yeah.
I used to be a VP of sales with a payroll tax consulting company. Payroll tax. Not the most exciting thing for an ex-fighter pilot to do.
Sure. Yeah, one day you're flying an F-16, the next day you're working on payroll tax.
That's another story. But, payroll and HR, they're so critical in getting the job done, because if people aren't getting their checks on time and people aren't getting paid and they can't deal with all the human resource issues there, that's going to affect the morale, the attitude of the rest of the company. People only complain to the payroll folks when they're not getting their checks on time. But really, what can I do to bring a sense of passion and inspiration to those payroll folks? Bring them in. Let other people appreciate them. If I'm in sales, let me go out with my payroll manager, my tech support, my customer service agent. Let me learn what you do in your business, and you can learn what I do in mine. I tell my clients, find a wingman in another segment of your company and take them out to lunch every month. Every month, go to lunch and just ask them about what they do. And it's going to increase your depth of your organization, understand different roles, and then more importantly, you'll have somebody to turn to if you have an issue with tech support or customer service. Hey, Joe, this is Walter. We had lunch a couple times last month, or whatever. I have a problem. I need help. So that's really, really important. Do those little things. Allow people to feel important in their organization. And really, 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 like you mentioned before, it's ultimately up to the leadership, because it all starts from the top and goes down.
But the idea that you just gave of somebody in the sales department calling somebody from the finance department and all the different departments, taking them out for lunch once a month, that's actually probably a pretty good plan for upward mobility. If you want to raise up the ranks, if you're knowing what's going on in these other groups, you're not only going to be able to do your job better, but you're going to become kind of a go-to person, because you're going to know. You're going to have a broader understanding of what's taking place in corporate environment.
Takes time and effort.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
But when you do that, it builds more loyalty within the organization.
Sure.
It improves my attitude. It makes me want to sweat more in peace so I don't bleed more. It's going to bring me to do the necessary things to win.
Let's talk about contingency planning.
When we brief our missions, like I mentioned before, we contingency plan. We sit down. No fighter pilot ever starts a mission before we brief. We set objectives. We understand the weather, the environment, the timeline. We allocate roles and responsibilities to the other members of our formation, and then we contingency plan. We basically say, all right, Chris, we're going on a two-ship formation today. Here's our target. These are our objectives, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if I get shot down for whatever reason, God forbid.
You guys actually say that?
Without a doubt.
Yeah, you have to. You have to address it, right? Nobody wants to, but you have to.
You got to be real.
Right, okay.
If my engine quits, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. If the weather changes, here's our alternate field. If the SAM goes from an SA2 to an SA6, this is what we can do. If I'm on fire, whatever. And then I need to brief you, hey, if I mess up, you're the deputy flight lead. You take over and lead me. How many folks in business have deputy flight leads? How many managers I talk to every month that don't have somebody they can turn to take over? God forbid something happens to them. They get shot down. They lose their job, or they have to take off a week because their kid is ill and they need to focus more on their family. Deputy flight lead's important. So we think about all these things on the ground and discuss them, plan them out, so when it happens in the heat of battle, we can respond because time is critical. So when you contingency plan, like I said, a sales call, you contingency plan a corporate meeting, a merger and acquisition, financials, whatever. You plan them on the ground, you take the time to do them, and then you can execute them more efficiently when it really happens.
You mentioned SAMs, and you had an experience with a couple of them, and then a follow-up couple of them. Tell us about that. What happened there?
April 28th, 1999, and flying out of Aviano in Italy, I flew a mission into Belgrade. This was during Allied Force, Operation Allied Force against Slobodan Milosevic. And we were targeted. I was supporting a group of F-117 stealth fighters who were taking out strategic targets in downtown Belgrade. And I had 4 wingmen we were flying with, and I was number 2. You know, you cross the FIBA, the forward edge of the battle area, into enemy territory. You go master arm hot, and you're like, okay, this is it. Time to do it. And around 2 minutes crossing the battle, my radar warning receiver went off. Beep, 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 beep. I look out, and no kidding, I see 2 big red fireballs coming up at me.
Surface-to-air missiles.
Surface-to-air missiles coming up, shooting at me. And it was the proverbial, kill or be killed. This is the moment of your life, Waldo, that you have got to execute. How many times does that happen in real life when this is it? This is your moment of glory? And
never like that, though. But still, things that are crucial for people. Yeah.
So I did my maneuver. I lowered the nose, gained the airspeed, and tried to do all the procedures, floundered, screwed up left and right, but I did it enough.
Tell us what you do when that happens.
Okay, well, basically, you got to lower your nose, and this is the unclassified version. You gain airspeed because speed is life in an F-16.
Yeah.
You lower the nose, and what you're trying to do is basically gain enough energy and maneuver to break the radar lock, which that's missile tracking on you, and also cause it to run out of energy as it corrects on you, okay? So you do these maneuvers, twist, turn, make a radio call to build the situational awareness, telling the other folks, SCAR 2, missile launch, right 3 o'clock. My wingman's 5 miles behind me. He knows he's in front of me. Right 3 o'clock is there. And obviously, he probably saw those 2 red fireballs coming up at me as well, right? Because it was night. And I do all those procedures, okay? The missiles blew up around 1,000 feet from my aircraft. I saw them explode like, I call them like sparklers you see on the 4th of July. And I remember thinking to myself, it was at that moment in time, that particular second, where I thought, like, I defeated the most incredible threat, the first real, no-kidding threat of my life. It was totally surreal, and I will never forget how it felt. 5 minutes later, we rejoined up, and I got into another pattern. Another 2 missiles were launched on me.
Yeah, good thing you settled the first 2, because you had another 2
So
coming.
I felt a little more confident, but when I was able to defeat that threat, it gave me more confidence. I was able to do a much better job. And, and that's very analogous to life as well.
Yeah.
You have a missile launch at you one day, it's going to happen again. You got to be able to deal with them, execute under the pressure, and feel good about it. Because when you're feeling good and the endorphins are flowing through your mind correctly and you feel confident, You're able to execute your mission and the procedures necessary a lot easier than if you're tense and scared and afraid, afraid to get killed.
Yeah, the first time you do anything or the first time you experience anything is a little difficult. You might experience a little fear, but by successfully achieving it the first time, then the second time, I don't know that looking down and seeing surface-to-air missiles ever becomes routine, but it becomes much easier for you to handle because you've already conquered it once. And
absolutely.
That's similar in life.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the process that you think is also good for corporate environment of briefing and debriefing.
Right. Well, we talked about briefing, sitting down before the missions and setting the contingencies and going out and executing. But when we come back from our mission, the critical component of accomplishing a successful mission is the debrief, where you sit down at a table like this, we take off our rank, because there has to be an equal playing field, and we discuss everything from A to Z, everything we talked about in the briefing and the planning, all the way down to the execution, landing, and taxi back. And we do this debriefing as a way to close the learning gap, okay? The reason why we take off our rank, so to speak, and we have an even playing field is that if you're my commander, my squadron commander, colonel, and I was the flight lead that day, and anybody could be a flight lead as long as they went through the program and earned that privilege. If I can't put you in a position where we feel on an equal playing field, if I think that your rank is going to intimidate me from telling you how it is, Chris, you weren't in a position, and I told you to brake right, and you didn't brake right. Was there something wrong with your radios? Why didn't you do it? And you need to be able to tell me, Walter, I wasn't paying attention, I was focusing somewhere else, I screwed up, or whatever. Maybe your radios were out. I need to be able to tell it like it is, because in combat, you've got to be able to execute and bring out these lessons learned. In particular, a lot of times there's young wingmen in the crowd, the new wingman that just started flying on your mission. If I, as a senior leader, if I'm the flight lead, the first thing we do is we admit our mistakes. We expose our chest to daggers, we call it, saying, okay, men and women, wingmen, I screwed up today. We had a radar trail departure in the weather, and I didn't brief the airspeeds on it. That's why we got too close. Or I didn't brief an alternate airfield. I forgot to do that in the mission. And you know what? If we had an emergency over, Bosnia or Herzegovina or wherever, I wouldn't have known where to go. And Joe, I expect you next time to tell me and correct that. When I expose my mistakes, isn't that going to facilitate more communication from everybody else?
Sure, yeah.
And it's also going to facilitate communication from the senior leader. So debriefing, going over everything that went right and went wrong, finding out the root cause of those problems, why did we mess up today, and take that as a lesson learned so that everybody in that group can learn from it and then execute it better next time. And sometimes that means taking that lesson learned, if there was a trend item, and going back into our training. If we're consistently screwing up radar trail departures, maybe we need to train on that in the simulator. Maybe we need to have a mission and a training mission to go out that. If you're consistently messing up a cold call or failing to properly deliver or give a product demonstration, maybe in the training department we need to fix that. So take the lessons learned, put it back into the organization so that everybody else can learn on it, and then change your training. And when you change your training, you'll be able to change your execution and make it better.
So is that something when you go in and work with clients, you talk to them about doing debriefing? Is that something that you find most people aren't doing?
Most people brief their missions, but they forget to do it on the ground. And sometimes they'll sit down and they'll talk about it briefly for a minute or two over a cup of coffee. But it has to be a process. It has to be a specific detailed process that goes through, and it takes a good amount of time to do that.
So quickly tell us about your analogy or your acronym of WIN. What does it mean to win?
WIN stands for work it now. Like I said before, the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed more. The winners in life understand that it takes sweat and sacrifice, that it takes work. And they don't put it off till tomorrow. They do it today. They do it now. I think it's very important to think about that when it comes to success in life. So many of us, we put it off till tomorrow what we can do today. And we understand that winning takes work and sacrifice. And we do it now. I think that's a good mindset to have. And when you start working it now, you can sit back and reap the rewards and benefits of all the sacrifices and relax and have fun, because that's what it's all about, enjoyment.
You have a book in the works called Wingman.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Wingman How to Transform Relationships into Victories in Business and Life. It basically talks about some of the things we mentioned today, but about at the end of the day, it's about building relationships and caring about other people. Having compassion and being able to solve the problems and challenges in your life, both in business and your personal life, is how we win. And Wingman is about those relationships. As a fighter pilot, Top Gun, whatever, it doesn't mean anything if it's not about the people that helped me get to where I am today. And that's what the book's about. It's great for business and personal development, and I'm excited to write it, and I'm excited for you to read it.
All right, and it's coming out 2006? You're going to get it out?
Yeah, end of 2006, December, it should be up and running, and I hope you hold me accountable to that, because I got to start working it now.
I will. Appreciate it. Glad we had the time together and that America gets to see a little bit of the guy that I've already known for a couple of years, so appreciate you being here with us.
Chris, you're an awesome wingman.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Thanks for listening to the Made for Success podcast. Get to know us at madeforsuccess.com/podcast. Meet the hosts of the Made for Success podcast and pick up a free copy of the Totally Motivated ebook by Chris Widener. We will see you next time on the Made for Success podcast.